Who am I? My name is Paul Carden. I am a staff software engineer for Tableau. I'm a developer on the mobile development team and a fan of mobile devices. As a matter of fact, I still have my original Palm Pilot, which I did not bring with me, but it is the star player of an amazing story. That story is, a couple of years ago, we had a Halloween decorating contest in the Tableau offices, and we went with the theme Mobile Graveyard. And so you can see we've actually got a desktop with mobile devices that are in the graveyard. My Palm Pilot's kind of upper left, and you can see an original iPhone hanging from the spider web there. And we totally killed it. We won. We got Halloween-themed mugs, Starbucks gift card. It was amazing. Well, as cool as that Palm Pilot was for its time, it was really a bit of a toy. You know, you could get some calendar and mail information. You could keep track of a to-do list, maybe play chess or a couple of little games like that. But if you really wanted to take some serious data with you on the go, you would not use a Palm Pilot. But what my company, where I was working at the time, did do was provide the developers with a setup like this, where they gave us two exactly identically configured PCs and then a hard drive that you could remove. You had a little key. You pulled out the hard drive, you took it home, plugged it into your identical machine at home, and then you could work from home. You could take your data on the go. It was amazing. Megabytes and megabytes of data. So, but that's enough about me. Tell me a little bit about you. You probably identify with at least one of these pictures. Maybe you've got an old PDP-8 in the backseat of your convertible too. How many of you are actually using Tableau Server right now in your organizations? Most of you. Okay, so some of you are still just on desktop, I guess is what I'm seeing. But the majority of you are on Tableau Server. Well, good news is you are all set up to use Tableau Mobile to connect to Tableau Server. There's no additional setup, no additional licensing or anything required. Tableau Mobile will connect directly. And just like you can use a web browser to connect to your Tableau server, you can use a web browser on your mobile device, as well as a mobile app, which I'll get to in just a minute. But so if you have, just maybe give me a little feel, how many of you have your Tableau servers on-premise, like behind your corporate firewalls? Okay. Then how many of you are online or cloud hosted? All right, so fewer, but still some. Great. Now, how many of you have used a mobile device before? That's a funny question, I know. All right, how many of you have ever had connectivity issues getting to the internet with that mobile device? Right, same number of people, I would assume, right? It's still not a given that you'll be able to get to your data even if you have that mobile device. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Here's the agenda, just to tell you a little bit of what we're doing. I'm going to talk about how you get data on that fancy mobile device and use it. The first thing that I'll talk about is subscriptions and alerts. And sometimes people don't think of this as a mobile feature, but if you've got email on your mobile device, you've got mobile data. And then, of course, how can we access server from the mobile device? Talk a little bit about that. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about an app that lets you work with local data that Tableau has put out. It's called Visible. And then finally, we'll go a little more in depth into the mobile app and talk about scenarios there, how you get to your data, how it works, and how it works offline. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, Tableau Server. Many years ago, in the dark times, there was no Tableau server. And so customers, of course, were requesting, hey, I want to be able to share my mobile data. I want to be able to share my dashboards and my visualizations with the rest of my team. How can I do that? And so the first versions of Tableau Server were essentially Tableau Desktop running on a beefy machine. And you would send in a request for a visualization. The desktop product would create a picture of that and then serve it back to the browser as essentially an image. And when you as a user would then click somewhere on that image, the browser client code would send the location of that click back to the server, and then the server would say, oh, I see you clicked in this region. You actually clicked on a quick filter. So let me go through my desktop code and create the new layout with a quick filter, send back the image. And so it was, you were almost a dumb terminal kind of connecting to the server like you were back in the 70s and 80s with the terminals going into the mainframe. Well, of course, performance wasn't great and the user experience wasn't great. And so we developed then a web interface into the server. And so nowadays you've got JavaScript and HTML. You're rendered, we send across a list of things that need to be displayed. It's rendered all locally on your browser client. And so the user experience is quite a bit different, quite a bit nicer. And I'll get to a little bit more about why that part is important, but just remember that we sort of have those two methods of accessing data. You can either get it back as an image, and we still do that actually on Tableau Server if you have a lot of data where we don't want to send it all across the wire. We'll actually do an image. But in most cases, you'll actually get the nice user experience. And they're fairly seamless, but there are some differences. Now, because we have this capability of creating an image of your visualization, we came up with a feature called subscriptions. And what subscriptions are is you can go into your browser, click on the little mail envelope-looking icon, and say, I want to subscribe to this. Your server admin or your site admin has set up some different types of schedules, like daily, at 5 a.m. or every 4 hours, or once a week on Monday, and so you can choose which type of schedule you would like that to go on. And then every time that schedule hits, that copy, a picture, and an image of that viz will be sent to your email. And so I call these date-driven alerts because you specify the date interval that you want these alerts, and then they come to your inbox. If you've been to one of Zach Woodall's presentations this week, he talks about data-driven alerts. That was shown at one of the keynotes this morning, on Tuesday morning. I was going to give this talk on Tuesday, but it got switched. It was shown at the keynotes, and now in an upcoming version of Tableau Server, you can actually specify data criteria where this subscription will be sent to you. So you can say, I only want the email to come to me if this particular threshold is reached in my data. And so let me show you just a little bit about, let me show you that working here on my iPhone. If we are, I'll cross our fingers. See if my iPhone's going to come up. All right, there it is. So what you're looking at now is I'm in my email program on my email app on my iPhone, and I've got an alerts folder where every night I get some different alerts. So here's an email that's showing, in this scenario, I'm a web developer, content developer, and I want to get a nightly viz of what were the top pages that were visited on my website over the past day or past time frame. And so here you see I've got this email, and so I can look at it. I can pinch and zoom to kind of look at different areas, but you can see that my list of fields in my domain or values in my domain is too big to fit, and so it's scrolled off. Of course, the picture is only taken the picture of the top so many, so there's a little bit of data missing from my viz. Well, I can just also tap on that viz, and it will direct me then to Tableau Server. So because I'm online, I can connect to my data from anywhere. I don't need to get through my firewall in this particular scenario. So if you're using Tableau online, if you've got Tableau hosted in the cloud somewhere, then the internet is your access into this server. And so now you can see, hey, look, I can actually scroll through and see what are kind of some of the lower level things. If I want to look at something not really as page views, but maybe I want to see how long they were on the page. Well, maybe it's not the downloads that's so big anymore, but there's other ones here, and I can, of course, sort by lowest. Oh, I pressed the lowest one, not the highest one. Sort by, a different measure if I want to, because I've got a live connection to Tableau server, and I can look through my data, play with it on my mobile device. Now, we've had a couple of different talks here at TC about designing a nice mobile experience for your dashboards, and Tableau 10 has something called the Device Designer, which lets you design a nice desktop version of your dashboard, and then also see how that would look on a mobile device and rearrange things for a mobile device if that's helpful. A great session to take a look at as you go back and review the content from TC16. Now, you can also get to these same visualizations on the mobile app, and let me switch to the mobile app for just a second and show you how that experience is the same and different. So the one thing about the mobile app is we've tried to make it easier for you to get to your favorite content. We don't want you to have to filter down to a different project or filter to or type in, search for the publisher or whatever. So we've decided that if you have selected a particular viz as your favorite on Tableau server, then we'll treat that special in the Tableau app. We'll make it easy for you to get to so that you don't have to do a lot of thumb typing on the app. So what I've got here is my list of favorites, and you can see that there's a nice, very big viz, relatively big version of the viz, and so I can see, here's my, okay, the iPhone decided to start one more time. Yeah. Luckily, I don't have to type in my passcode. So, okay, we're back in. Here you can see several vizes that I have favorited. Oh, it's not showing? No. It's a little bit flaky. Okay, there we go. I'm going to switch over to my iPad in a second, and it seems to have a better connection. So here you can see now what I've got is we have cached, and we've asked the server for those same visualizations that you would get in a subscription. And so now those are stored on the device, and I've got nice big versions of them, and I can just kind of swipe through and say, oh, look, here are all the vizes that I'm interested in. Those are on my local device now, and so I can look at a snapshot version of them, or you can see that on the top there's a toggle. When I press, you'll see that there's kind of a little splash where my finger pressed. So I just switched to live view. Now it's going to Tableau Online and asking to give me a fully interactive version of the viz. And now, of course, I can scroll through and see my data, just like I did on the web browser. The advantage, of course, to the mobile app is we can cache your credentials if you say remember me, so you don't have to log in every 4 hours. We can also keep nice versions of of these vizes on your local device, just like you would get from subscriptions. Sure. Question.
My director finds the notification from last week and goes in and taps it. He can insert the one from that notification or the one.
Yeah, good question. That question was these subscriptions come daily. If I happen to select one from a couple of weeks ago in my email and tap on that viz, what am I going to see from the server? The server will serve up the latest version of the viz. So it won't look like the one that was 2 weeks ago. It'll just be whatever is currently there. Yes?
If you tap the viz in an email, will it fire to a browser or will it fire to the app?
Yeah, that's another great question. So if I'm in my email and I press the button, will it go to the browser or the app? So in the current version of Tableau Server, it will go to the browser. However, we demonstrated at Devs on Stage what we were calling direct linking, which means we'll also put in a link to the mobile app, and then that will go start up your mobile app. If you're already signed into that server, it will even go to the right viz that is selected in the email. And so it'll be a lot more seamless experience. And that's coming soon. Good question, thanks. So that's how we get to mobile data and use it on our device in kind of a high-level view. Now, just to kind of recap, we're talking about how we get to Tableau Server from a mobile device. If you're online, then you've got an internet connection, then you've got access to your server, whether that's cloud hosted like with Google, Amazon, Azure, anything like that, or whether you're actually using our hosting to get to your data. Now, when your Tableau server is on premise, then you're behind a firewall, and you've got some extra steps to get to. You need some sort of way to get through that firewall, like with a VPN or reverse proxy type of solution. I'm not really going to go into that part of it in my talk today, but there is a great session that was given yesterday called Deploy and Enjoy, using Tableau Mobile at enterprise scale. And Ron and Madeline, two other developers on our team, went more in depth about how you would get into Tableau server behind a firewall, what VPN solutions, what MDM solutions you can use to configure devices so that it makes it easy for you and your users to get to your Tableau data. So I'd also highly recommend reviewing that as you review the conference content. Yes?
So when we access through the VPN, it's really, really slow, painfully slow. Is that something that needs to be fixed on the VPN or something on Tableau server, or where does that problem need to be addressed?
Yeah, the question is access when you're on when the VPN makes the connection slow. In general, I don't know any reason why Tableau server would respond differently. It's just getting data packets at a certain rate, and so it really is kind of your network pipe that needs to be analyzed. And there's not any additional. Once you're authenticated, you just get a session sort of ID, and that gets passed in across that pipe. And so as long as that ID is valid, which would really be the same whether you're coming through a firewall or inside your intranet. So there's not anything additional that Tableau server really cares about. If that makes sense. I should be on this, on the, oh yeah, let's toggle back to the, to this. Okay, great. So what is this? What is this picture? Anyone know? Yeah, someone said Napa. That you may even know the name, the address of this vineyard, I guess, if you're a fan. This is a vineyard in Northern California. How about this? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where this was, but it's a stingray flying around over the ocean. And one final picture. What is this a picture of? Can you tell? It's a hospital. You can see kind of nurses stationed there in the corner. What do all three of these things have in common? Well, I'll tell you. They're all deserts. Now, they're not weather deserts and they're not food deserts, but they're data deserts, okay? This is a place where you have no internet connectivity. There's no cell tower sitting in the middle of your vineyard. The satellite phone out on the ocean is not going to be very reliable. And of course, down in the basement of a shielded hospital building, you're not going to be able to get out to that cell tower out on the street. So these are all situations where you don't have connectivity to your Tableau server, no matter where it's hosted, okay? So what can we do to access and use our important data when we're truly offline? Well, we already talked about subscriptions and alerts. As long as you have cached your email on your mobile device, you can still get to that data. You could still think and kind of plan based on that data. You could show that email to a customer or another user, and of course that's one great way to get that data on your device. I'm going to talk in just a second about Visible and show you a way that you can then analyze a local data set on your device when you have no internet connection. And then finally, we'll talk about offline capabilities of our Tableau mobile app, including the snapshots I just showed you. Well, here's another sort of quiz. Anybody recognize the food item in the upper right? I should ask, is anybody from the Seattle area? Yes. Okay, sort of. This is a ginger miso taco, so this would actually fit well in kind of the Austin food cuisine as well. There is a food vendor called Marination, and they do a lot of sort of fusion kind of cuisine. A lot of kind of they'll use Korean and Japanese and Chinese ingredients. Hawaiian, they do spam in a lot of their like sliders and things like that. So really good food. Well, they're not currently a Tableau server customer. They're a fairly small establishment. They've got a couple of storefronts and a couple of food trucks, but they have data. And you can imagine there are several other scenarios where someone, without a big set of data would still want to do some sort of analysis. So I'm going to show you how Tableau helps people in this scenario see and understand their data. Let me switch over to my iPad. So this is a new product called Visible. It's been out for about a year now. And if I go into it, I can use it to load anything that's local on my computer. So this could be someone has sent me an Excel spreadsheet, or I have access to a cloud drive of some sort where I've got CSV files or tabular data. What Visible has done has loaded that data into its memory and done some analysis and seen, well, what looks like a dimension, what looks like a measure, how can I help my user see and understand this data. So I didn't have to do any sort of setup here. I didn't have to create a viz or drag in any pills or anything like that. It's just said, it looks to me like sales amount is a pretty good measure, and here's some good dimensions that seem to have a good sort of spread across the data, and so it's automatically created this viz for me. So this is already useful information. Now this is actually not Marination's data, but it's the similar sort of thing. I've got some restaurant data here. I see I make a certain amount of money through catering, through daily specials, and let's say for example, I just want to look at my retail sales and not at the catering sales. So I want to filter that out. Well, you can see as I put my finger down on the catering and I drag it out, it's being filtered out. So now it says exclude catering, and now I'm just looking at my daily special kind of things. I can also, if I want to switch between different measures, so I'm looking here at menu item, I can drag those, and now I see it grouped by, what type of time of day it was. Was it my lunch session or what? I can see which weekday it was. Looks to me like Wednesday's the biggest day, and I'm getting insights onto my data. But now, let's say as a restaurant owner, I can say, it seems like Friday is actually a lot busier than Wednesday. This is kind of interesting data. Why is that? I realize now that I have excluded catering from my set of data here. So let me drag catering back in. I'll just press on this and bring it back in. And you can see as I bring it back in, Wednesday has gone down and Friday has gone up. So that's a nice kind of visual representation of how my data changes as I work through the different filtering things that happen. So now I see, okay, Friday is a lot bigger all of a sudden once I put catering back in, and I've got yet another insight into my data. You may have scenarios in your business. This is a great educational tool. If you've got you've got your kids doing a research project in high school and they've collected some data for science or things like that. There are just a ton of different ways that you can analyze and see and understand data using Visible. So it's highly recommended. And if you go to view data in Tableau Server, let's say you selected a bunch of marks and you say view data, you can download that data on your mobile, and if you're on your mobile device, you can say open it in Visible, and it'll bring that data from Tableau Server right into Visible, and you can do additional analysis in Visible. So it's another great tool to just take a small set of your data that you're interested in and do some additional work. All right.
So is this a separate app?
Yeah, good question. So the question is this a separate app? Yes, it is. Visible is a standalone app. It's also free. You just go to the App Store. Runs on iPad and iPhone. We do not actually have it for Android devices at this time. And you can download it right now. There's some sample data, restaurants and movies and things like that. And then, of course, you can bring in your own data and work with it. So no you don't have to have Tableau server, and like I said, you can select data from Tableau server and download it into Tableau into Visible, but it's not necessary.
How do you choose data in that app?
Yeah, in this app, so this is saying restaurant data. Let's see, restaurant data. If I select the upper left menu button there, then there's open. I could go to a Cloud Drive, or what often happens is I'm in my Cloud Drive app or my email app, and I select a data file, and then the open menu will come up on your iPad and say open with, and it'll have, if you've got Excel or Sheets or something there, it'll ask for that. But if Visible is installed, then Visible will be one of your menu options as well. All right, so that's a little bit of a demo about Visible. Let's switch back to the computer. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the offline capabilities of the mobile app. We talked about offline snapshots. We talked about the mechanism that you get those into your mobile app is by favoriting them on your server. You can favorite them from a web browser, or you can also favorite them within the UI of the mobile app. Either way. So if you go to your recents list, let's go ahead and I'll switch to the demo in just a second. But I also want to tell you what's coming soon. So at the Devs on Stage keynote, Britta got up on stage and talked a little bit about some offline capabilities that are coming in the mobile app. And so remember back at the very beginning of the talk, we talked about images versus rendered JavaScript and HTML. The current app, what we're caching offline is just images. And so if you want that interactive experience with the HTML and JavaScript, then you have to be online. Well, coming very soon is we're going to be caching the actual HTML and JavaScript as well, so that you can have interactivity when you're offline, even if you're not connected to the internet. If you're in one of these deserts, we'll bring you some interactivity. And I'm going to demo that right now. So let's go back to the iPad. And so this is again Tableau. It is refreshing. Let's see if it's going to work. Yes, it works. And the reason that it works, so this is our Alpo Dev server. If I've got, I guess, enough time to tell you why Alpo Dev. There's a computer term called dog fooding, which means if your app or whatever product you're releasing is not something it's not ready for human consumption, but maybe you'd feed it to your dog. So you're doing testing on it. That's called dog fooding. Like you think it's pretty good, so you're using it internally, and so on. And so we call our servers Alpo and Alpo Dev because those are brand names of dog food. So next time you see that on a presentation, you'll know where that comes from. So here I'm on Alpo Dev, and I can connect to that server because in my settings, you can see my VPN is connected here on the upper level. I'm actually tunneling through the firewall up in Seattle and connecting to it from here in Austin, Texas. And so I can look at my viz. I can select things like here's Peak Harden. That's me. I have a bug. I can look at the tooltip. Tooltips work because I'm connected. So I see that this has something to do with localizing strings. I need to work on one of the scripts that I've written to get that to work better in a certain scenario. I can see our dev manager, Scott Haney. He's got 8 bugs. These are all, he needs to respond to some beta feedback or feedback from users. They're not actually product bugs, but he's got several things on his to-do list. And so this tooltip then has aggregated the data because I've selected multiple marks. So how would this work offline? Well, in the current shipping app, it wouldn't. So if I go back to my settings and I turn off the VPN, then and I go in, now my snapshot, of course, that still works. But if I try to go into the live view, it's going to say, hey, you're not connected to Tableau server. I looked for that URL, but I can't resolve it. And so you're out of luck. You're going to have to rely on your snapshots. Well, here's a development version of Tableau. And here, same thing is going on, but we've put, just for development purposes, we're still working out the user experience a little bit, but here at the bottom you can see I've got something that says view offline. So I'm gonna select that, and now this cast JavaScript that I've taken from the server is now available here. And so you can see it's totally, well, I don't want to say totally, but it has some limited interactivity. So if I select my bug, I can see, oh, this tooltip works. I can look at this even when I'm offline. So there's, of course, no VPN connection. I'm not connected to my server. However, if I look at this scenario of how many bugs does Scott have, the function that aggregates the marks is still needs to call into the server to do that calculation. And so I don't get the tooltip that says, here's the aggregated totals. And so what the first version that we're delivering to you will be something like this, where individual tooltips will work, highlighting some legend selections. Like if this isn't actually a legend, it's a filter, but if it were just a legend, this priority thing up in the corner, then it would actually highlight, the areas of the legend. And so as we move more and more functionality so that the computation happens on the local device, you'll get more and more functionality offline. So this is just kind of opening that pipeline, and you'll see as we do our regular releases every quarter, there'll be new features that will come out and be available offline. Yes?
Push then, so it's the director, right? They don't want to do work. So is that something where behind the scenes we can make it so that he or she is getting something that's pushed to the iPad?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is, how does this work how does this data get to the iPad? So I see I've got it cached offline. Well, like I said before, the critical thing is that it's favorited. So your exec needs to favorite that dashboard, or you need to go in and favorite it for them so that it shows up in their list. And then once they access that on the iPad, then we've got a background process on the server that says, okay, here's all my list of mobile users that have connected within the past couple of weeks. I know that these are active iPad users, and so I'm going to serve up versions, new versions on a regular basis. I'll prepare those, and then Apple has a background processing mechanism that allows us at regular intervals to connect to the server and say, hey, is there any new data? Is there any new data? And if there is, then we can put it into a list of things to be downloaded. And in the background, even if the app's not running, even if your iPad is not even active, it could be shut on the nightstand. As long as that has connectivity to the server, it will refresh that background data on a regular basis. And that's true both for the offline snapshots as well as for the HTML and JavaScript caching that's coming soon. Any other questions about offline snapshots or offline HTML? Yes?
So you said offline snapshots are only available for favorites?
Yes, that's correct.
Can an administrator go in and choose the favorites?
Yeah, the question is, can an administrator choose favorites for a user? And I do not think that is a current thing. So you would have to be on the user's account in order to do that, just like those favorites. So one of the future things that they talked about was did they call it spaces, or what did they call it, team areas or something like that, sandboxes? It was Francois that was showing it at the keynote, and he thought, yeah, you could have a local version of things that you worked on, but also a team version. And so what we think we'll probably move to is also sort of a team feature where you as a team admin could say, these are the things that my team cares about, and then all of those would be cached offline. So that's something that's coming. Yeah.
Will the view offline feature going to both phone and tablets?
Yeah, the question is this available on both phone and tablets? And the answer is yes. We will cache that on phone and tablet. Right now, the offline snapshot feature has only been implemented for iOS, and so we're not quite up to parity with the Android app, but that's also very high on our list. And once we do reach parity, then our commitment is we'll stay in lockstep for iOS and Android, because we know, in a U.S. corporate environment, iOS is kind of rules, but if you look at more of a worldwide and sort of several different sectors, and Android is very prevalent as well. So we're going to get those to parity and keep them in lockstep, both for tablet and for phone. Yes.
When you create favorites, the user's going to create favorites which are desktop favorites and some of them which are for mobile. So there's no way to distinguish, right?
Yeah, the question is there a distinction between desktop favorites or mobile favorites? And it's the same list. So if you're in your browser and you say, I want to favorite this viz, so here in my favorites list, here in my favorites list, they've all got that orange star, and those could have been selected from my desktop browser or from my mobile device. So if I would have gone to recent, because I'm offline, I can't go to recents and all. But if I went to my set of, if I were connected, this set of recents would show all the visits that I recently visited, whether they were from the browser or from the mobile device. And then I could favorite or unfavorite those from that part of the UI. And then they would show up, if I switched back to favorites, those new favorites would then show up in my list. They would be cached. The downloading would happen there immediately.
How would you recommend then creating a dashboard with the iPhone shape and that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
So would you create one for desktop use, one for iPhone use, and then recommend the users to subscribe to both or favorite both?
Yeah. So the question is, how does this work with Device Designer? And so when you are favoriting a dashboard, you're favoriting that URL of that dashboard. It's going to render, if you've used Device Designer and made a mobile version of it, it's going to render differently on the phone than it would on the desktop. So if I'm in my browser and I look at my list of favorites and choose this this particular viz, then I'm going to see the desktop rendering of it. However, if I am on my iPhone and I look at that favorite, I'm going to see the iPhone rendering. So you don't need to favorite them separately. It's just one dashboard that then is rendered differently depending on where you're viewing it.
So they're linked together.
Yeah. The Device Designer is essentially allowing you to create multiple views of the same dashboard that all have the same URL on the server, so that you don't need to do separate, handle them separately. Did you have a question? Or I thought I saw a hand over. Okay. Any other questions? Or yes.
So from the administrator's point of view, can they view who's accessing the page by which device?
Yeah, the question is, can an administrator tell who is accessing a view by which device? We do not have an admin view of that pre kind of created for we do some of the other admin views on Tableau server. However, that is logged when a user connects. There's a user agent string which says this is the device, this type, this is the version of the mobile app that I'm using to connect to it, and so on. And so you could use some of our log viewing and kind of log processing tools to get that data, and then once you had created that data, you could view it in Tableau. I'm not sure if the REST API goes to the logs or not, but once you might have to actually download the log and process it. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure if the REST API supports that yet or not.
So if they view it in the email, they don't get logged. It's only if they click onto it.
Yeah, that's correct. So the logging, the question is about when it gets logged, and the log only happens when you connect to Tableau server. So if you've just looked at it in your email, you may have been offline, and so it wouldn't show up as a view at that point.
Sometimes I'm looking at the log of the user activity, and it seems to me that numbers are high, and I'm thinking they must be high just because they've received the subscription. So is the sending of the subscription to the user registered as like a hit?
So sending of the subscription does that count as a hit? I can see how that may happen, because a subscription, the image for the subscription is created in the context of the user. So if I have a default view, or if I have only access to certain rows of data or things like that, those subscriptions are created in my user context. So you and I subscribe to the same viz, we may get different images sent to us because of our permissions or whatever we've done. So I can imagine that as the background or process has to then kind of set up that user, it's possible that it might think of that. To verify that, you might want to look at a user that has high amount of data and kind of go through the logs and see when is that happening. If there's a lot of hits at 2 in the morning, then you know, okay, that's where that's coming from. All right, well, let's go back and kind of wrap up. So we've talked a little bit about what's coming soon as far as interactivity on the mobile devices. So just to kind of summarize then, subscriptions, they're date-driven now, they'll be data-driven later, and it'll be a great way for you to stay on top of your data on your mobile device. We talked about how you can connect to your server and get data even when you're far away from your corporate firewall through online and cloud hosted or with VPN solutions that go through your firewall. The key to all of this offline goodness is favoriting your vises. If you do that, we know that you like that viz and we'll keep it on your local device. And by doing that, you can stay on top of your data wherever you are. Let's talk a little bit about what other things you can learn about mobile at this conference. There are still a couple of sessions later today. This Size Matters one is an overview of the device designer feature. So if you're thinking about creating dashboards that work well on mobile devices, you can go to that today, or you can, of course, view it online after the conference. If you want to learn about some of the forward-looking things that you saw in the keynotes about Tableau Mobile, down on the first floor there's a Tableau lab, and you can go in and talk to some of the designers and developers that are working on some of these new alerting. They talked a little bit about this metrics feature, so you can talk a little bit about that with the mobile development team. What did Tableau talk about in previous sessions? Well, there's kind of creating a culture of mobile. That's what Mobilize Your Organization is. How do you get your execs and your users interested in mobile devices? Zach talked about data-driven alerts, and that first one was given by our VP of Mobile, Dave Story. Designing dashboards is kind of a conceptual thing of what looks good on a mobile device. How do touch targets need to be bigger? Should I simplify my dashboards and things like that? So conceptual thing. Deploy and Enjoy is the one about VPN and MDM and connecting with SAML and all sorts of things like that. If you are someone that wants to, you've created some corporate apps and you want to host Tableau vises inside those apps, Mobile App Bootstrap is your answer. And then Tableau server deployments, there are a few things that you can tweak to say how often will these vises get these background refreshes happen. Are users even allowed to cache offline data? If you've got a high security sort of corporation, you may want to turn that feature off altogether. And then our customers gave several talks that talk about mobile. These are the ones that I just saw in the descriptions, but I'm sure many of them mentioned mobile. So if your industry is healthcare or insurance, banking, education, games and gaming, if you make delicious beverages or tasty cornflakes, you can use Tableau Mobile, as your fellow customers do. Let's see, we've kind of had our Q&A as we've gone. Are there any other last questions? I'm happy to answer, and I'm happy to stay after. Here's my exciting announcement, though. Do you have trouble winning online quizzes? What does that mean? When you try to select your favorite Disney princess, is it always Sleeping Beauty? Is a Star Trek captain you're most like always Cisco? Because that's not a win. Or when you're sorted, you take the online sorting quiz, do you always get sorted into Hufflepuff? Well, don't be discouraged. Tableau can help. Take our exciting session survey quiz. You complete this session survey from the details of your TC16 app. 5s for the win, all right? You will win this quiz if you select 5s. And of course, give us your feedback. What did you like about this session? What should we cover more in depth? Are there any breakout sessions that you think would be great to cover? And of course, we'll tailor our online content, our white papers, our conference content for next year, all based on your responses. So it's a win for you if you take this quiz. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and I'll be up here after it if you have questions.